Since childhood, the life of Jacques, our main character, has been far from ordinary. He was born in a small town in the south of France into a family where there was always not enough money. His father, Pierre, worked as a loader at a local factory, and his mother, Hélène, cleaned the houses of wealthier people. There was always not enough money, and this left its mark on the life of the family. Jacques grew up as a withdrawn and gloomy child. At school, he did not get along with his classmates, often getting into fights and trouble. His teachers considered him a difficult child and did not pay him enough attention. But despite all this, Jacques had a sharp mind and natural cunning, which helped him get out of difficult situations. His first experience with the criminal world occurred when he was only 10 years old. Then he accidentally came across local street robbers who were using children for petty thefts. Jacques immediately realized that this could be a way to make money and help his family. He began working for them, quickly mastering the techniques of pickpocketing and bypassing security systems. A few years later, when Jacques turned 14, he was already an experienced thief. But his ambitions extended beyond petty thefts. He dreamed of more, of things that could bring him real money and fame in the criminal world. Jacques continued to develop his skills and soon became a prominent figure in the criminal world of his city. At the age of 16, he joined a more serious group involved in robbing banks and jewelry stores. His natural cunning and ability to plan operations made him an indispensable participant in every theft. Each new business brought Jacques not only money, but also experience. He learned to hide his tracks, avoid police ambushes, and predict the actions of his enemies. His reputation grew, and he soon became known as the Fox for his agility and ability to remain undetected. At the age of 20, Jacques was already the leader of his own gang. Under his leadership, the most daring robberies were carried out, which all of France was talking about. He became a symbol of the underworld, fearing and respecting both his colleagues and the police. His name became synonymous with the word elusive, and many crime lords sought to work with him, or at least avoid confrontation. One day, Jacques decided that petty robbery no longer brought him pleasure. He conceived the most daring crime of his career, the robbery of the largest bank in Paris. The plan was grandiose and required careful preparation. Jacques studied the bank's layouts, the movements of the guards, and the daily routine of the employees. He planned every step, foresaw every possible problem. Having assembled his team, Jacques began preparing for the robbery. They trained every night, practicing every step of the plan. Jacques knew that this would be his finest hour or his last day of freedom. But the risk did not frighten him. On the contrary, it spurred his desire to achieve success. The day of the robbery has arrived. Jacques and his team entered the bank, armed to the teeth and ready for any outcome. The plan was clear and thoughtful, and the first minutes went smoothly. But, as often happens, unforeseen circumstances intervened. One of the security guards managed to call the police, and soon the building was surrounded. Jacques understood that the situation was out of control, but it was too late to retreat. He decided to act to the end, using all his experience and skill. Time passed, and tension grew. The police demanded that he surrender, but Jacques was not going to give up without a fight. Negotiations with the police dragged on, and Jacques realized that he had only a few hours before the special forces would begin the assault. He developed an escape plan on the fly, using all his experience and intelligence. He knew that every decision could cost him his life, but risk was part of his essence. At this moment, when it seemed that all paths were closed, Jacques noticed a weak point in the bank's security system. It was a small ventilation duct that led to the basements of the building. He quickly assembled a team and, explaining the plan, began to act. There was little time, and every second was worth its weight in gold. While making their way through the narrow and dark tunnels, Jacques and his team heard a noise and realized that the police were already inside the building. But their luck has not left them yet. They managed to reach an abandoned exit from the basement, which led to the next block. Jacques knew that this moment was their last chance for freedom. A pre-prepared transport was waiting for them on the street. Jacques and his team, hiding in the car, quickly drove away from the raid zone, but even at this stage they could not relax. The police were already beginning to block the roads, and every street could be the last. Jacques again demonstrated his ingenuity and composure. He took a less obvious route that led them to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Here they temporarily took refuge, counting their loot and considering their next steps. However, this robbery did not pass without a trace. All of France now knew Jacques' face. He became the most wanted criminal in the country, and the police were not going to stop until they found him. Jacques realized that now his life had changed forever, and his every action would be under scrutiny. Jacques began a new life in hiding. He used his connections and ability to remain undetected to continue his business, but now with even greater caution. He had to change his appearance so as not to be recognized on the streets. Jacques knew that his old life was over, but this did not stop him from new, ambitious plans. Time passed, and Jacques continued to remain in the shadows, planning a new, daring crime. He understood that each subsequent operation could be his last, but risk and adrenaline were his life. He became even more sophisticated and careful, avoiding the mistakes of the past. His name still sounded like a legend in the criminal world, and every new criminal dreamed of being like him. Jacques became a symbol of elusiveness and skill, but he knew that the real fight was yet to come. Jacques knew that his new life in hiding required more caution and strategic thinking. He began to collect information about large frauds that could be pulled off without too much fuss. One of these operations was the robbery of an elite jewelry store in Paris, where jewelry worth millions of euros was stored. For this case, Jacques assembled a new team consisting of the best specialists in their field: burglars, hackers, and former military personnel. Each of them had unique skills that were essential to the success of the operation. Jacques knew that this heist had to be perfect, and so the preparation took several months. During preparation, Jacques carefully studied all the details. He learned the guard schedules, alarm schemes, and even the behavioral patterns of store employees. The team trained daily, practicing every step until it became automatic. Jacques understood that the slightest mistake could cost them their freedom. The day of the robbery arrived. Jacques and his team approached the job with the precision of professionals. Having hacked the alarm system, they entered the building, disabling security cameras and neutralizing the guards without unnecessary noise. Jacques personally led the operation, monitoring every move of his men. The robbery went as planned. The team quickly collected the jewelry, and within minutes they were leaving the building. But this time Jacques had no intention of leaving any traces. He provided for everything, from hidden routes to false evidence that was supposed to confuse the police. After the successful heist, Jacques and his team escaped to safety, where they divided up the loot. Everyone got their share, but Jacques knew that the most important thing was not the money, but the opportunity to continue his activities. He became even more cautious, realizing that the police would not leave him alone. Despite police efforts, Jacques remained elusive. He continued his criminal deeds, each time surprising everyone with his cunning and ability to avoid arrest. His legend grew, and rumors of his exploits spread far beyond France. Jacques realized that it was time to expand his horizons. He began planning operations abroad, partnering with international crime syndicates. His name became known in the criminal world around the world, and every new criminal dreamed of working with him. Meanwhile, the police continued their hunt. Jacques was pursued by the best detectives and agents, but he was always one step ahead. His life became an endless game of cat and mouse, where every mistake could cost him his freedom. But Jacques did not stop. He continued to develop new plans that combined daring and genius. Every new day was a challenge for him, which he accepted with passion and confidence in his abilities. Jacques knew that his life was a constant movement, and he was ready for any challenge. Thus continued the life of Jacques, a dangerous criminal whose deeds became a legend throughout the world. His story is not over yet, and new adventures and challenges await him. Jacques continued to develop plans to expand his criminal empire. He understood that it would be difficult for him to cope alone with the growing threat from the police and competitors. So he decided to create a network of trusted people who could act on his behalf and manage various aspects of his business. One of Jacques' first steps was to establish contacts with international criminal groups. He began to establish connections with the mafias of Italy, Russia, and Latin America. This cooperation allowed him to gain access to new markets and opportunities, as well as strengthen his position in the criminal world. Jacques organized several large arms and drug smuggling operations, which brought him huge profits. He invested this money in legal businesses that served as a cover for his criminal activities. He now owned nightclubs, restaurants, and even construction companies through which he laundered money and expanded his influence. However, despite the successes, Jacques understood that his position remained unstable. The police intensified their efforts, and competitors tried to undermine his position. One of these threats was a new player in the criminal arena, a ruthless mafioso named Luigi. He began to actively interfere in Jacques' affairs, trying to take away part of his profits and undermine his authority. Jacques decided that the time had come for decisive action. He began to develop a plan to eliminate Luigi and his people. It was a complex operation that required maximum secrecy and precision. Jacques understood that a mistake could cost him not only his business, but also his life. At night, while Luigi and his henchmen were in one of their hideouts, Jacques and his team launched an attack. They acted quickly and ruthlessly, eliminating everyone who stood in their way. As a result, Luigi was killed and his people fled. Jacques proved that he is still the most dangerous and influential criminal. This victory strengthened Jacques' position and allowed him to focus on his future plans. He continued to develop his network, introducing new technologies and methods to evade law enforcement. Jacques understood that in the modern world, information is the key to success, and therefore invested in the best hacking groups that helped him bypass security systems and find vulnerabilities in competitors. The police did not give up trying to catch Jacques. They developed new strategies and brought in international experts to put an end to his criminal activities. But Jacques was always one step ahead, using his connections and knowledge to remain elusive. One day, when Jacques was developing another plan, he received an unexpected offer. One of his old acquaintances, now working for international intelligence, offered him a deal. In exchange for immunity and the opportunity to start a new life, Jacques had to provide information about all his contacts and operations. It was a difficult decision, but Jacques knew his time in freedom might be limited. Jacques agreed to the deal, realizing that this might be his only chance for a quiet life. He passed on all the information and disappeared, starting a new life under a different name. But his legend continued to live in the criminal world, and many remembered him for a long time as the most dangerous and brilliant criminal in France. Jacques, now under the new name Alex, has found refuge in New York, a city where you can get lost among millions of people and start a new life. Having changed his appearance and documents, he began studying the city, its underworld, and opportunities for new robberies. At first, Alex behaved cautiously, settling into the new territory and establishing contacts with local criminal elements. His experience and past reputation helped him quickly gain trust and respect. He knew that New York was a city of opportunity with many new things to do. Alex developed a plan to rob a large jewelry store on Fifth Avenue. The store was famous for its rare and expensive jewelry, and its security system was one of the most advanced in the city. But for Alex, it was a challenge that he accepted with pleasure. He assembled a small but professional team consisting of the best specialists in their field: crackers, hackers, and surveillance evaders. Every step of the robbery was carefully thought out and rehearsed. Alex knew that the success of the operation depended on their well-coordinated work and the accuracy of the plan. The day of the robbery has arrived. At night, when the store was closed, Alex and his team got inside. Having hacked the alarm system and disabled the surveillance cameras, they began the main stage. Time passed and they knew that every minute counted. They quickly and carefully collected all the valuable jewelry, leaving no trace of their presence. But, as often happens, fortune brought an unexpected twist. One of the security officers, who was supposed to be on vacation, unexpectedly returned and noticed problems with the security system. An alarm was sent to the police, and the building was soon surrounded. Alex knew he had to act quickly. He gave the command for an emergency exit through a pre-prepared route in the basement that led to the old sewer tunnels. The team followed him, avoiding police pursuit. After passing through the tunnels, they found themselves on the streets of New York and quickly mixed with the crowd. Luck was again on their side, and they managed to escape without loss. The robbery was a success, and Alex once again confirmed his status as a master of the underworld. Now he had the money and resources for further operations. He decided that New York would become his new home, where he would develop his criminal empire. Alex continued to commit daring robberies, each time surprising the police with his ingenuity and cunning. He used all his knowledge and experience to remain elusive. Soon his name became a legend in the criminal world of New York. But with each new case, the police intensified their efforts. Alex knew that his battle with the law was an endless game of cat and mouse. He prepared for new challenges, realizing that his life would always be full of risk and danger. Time passed, and Alex continued to remain in the shadows, planning new daring robberies. His story in New York was just beginning, and new adventures and challenges awaited him. Alex continued to grow his criminal empire in New York, planning and executing increasingly complex and daring heists. Each time he surprised the police and his enemies, demonstrating unprecedented ingenuity and composure. One of these robberies was an attack on the city's largest jewelry warehouse, located in an industrial area of Brooklyn. This warehouse was known for its tight security measures and huge reserves of precious stones and metals. For Alex, this was not just another task, but a real test of his skills. Alex reassembled his team, adding new specialists. Among them was a hacker named Marcus, who could hack any security system, and a mechanic, Linda, who could bypass any locks and safes. Each of them was a professional in their field, and Alex trusted them as much as himself. Preparations for the robbery took several months. Alex and his team studied every detail, developed escape plans and ways to bypass security. They understood that success depended on their well-coordinated work and accuracy in executing the plan. The day of the robbery arrived. Alex and his team entered the warehouse through an old sewer system they discovered during preparations. They knew that the warehouse's security system was connected to a central server, and Marcus began hacking on the spot, disabling cameras and alarms. Linda, meanwhile, opened safes using her skills and special tools. Everything was going according to plan, but suddenly the security system restarted and the alarm went off in the warehouse. Alex realized that they only had a few minutes before the police arrived. He quickly gave the command for an emergency exit. The team, having collected everything they managed to take, began to retreat through a pre-prepared route. But this time the police were faster, and soon the building was surrounded. Alex and his team took refuge in one of the old abandoned warehouse premises, where they had a cache of weapons and means of escape. He knew that a fight awaited them and was ready for any development of events. A shootout began and the police tried to storm their position. In the midst of the battle, Alex noticed an opportunity to escape. In one of the rooms, there was an old elevator that led to the roof of the building. He quickly gathered a team and, covering each other, they began to climb up. The police were following them, but Alex knew that they had a pre-arranged escape plan on the roof. A helicopter was waiting for them on the roof, which Alex had rented in advance through a figurehead. The helicopter took off, taking them away from the police and danger. Alex was once again one step ahead of his pursuers. The robbery was successful, despite all the difficulties and unexpected turns. Alex and his team divided the loot and escaped, each going to their own hideout. But Alex knew that this was only the beginning of his new life in New York. The police were furious with his audacity and ability to evade justice. They redoubled their efforts to catch him, but Alex remained elusive. His reputation grew, and every new crime figure dreamed of working with him, or at least learning from him. Alex continued to develop new plans, each time surprising everyone with his ingenuity and composure. He understood that his life in New York would be full of dangers, but this only fueled his excitement. His story was just beginning, and new adventures and challenges awaited him. Alex's life in New York was gaining momentum. Each new robbery became more daring and complex, but this only fueled his excitement. He was enjoying the game of cat and mouse with the police and had no intention of stopping. However, despite his successes, Alex understood that his position remained unstable. He began to establish connections with the local mafia and other criminal groups in order to provide himself with protection and support. One of these allies was Vito Lombardi, a powerful crime boss who controlled much of the New York underworld. Vito offered Alex a partnership in exchange for a share of his operations and protection from competitors. Alex knew that this offer could be a trap, but he had no choice. He agreed, hoping that he could use Vito to his advantage. One day, Vito offered Alex a new job, robbing one of the most secure banks in the city center. It was a risky undertaking, but the reward promised to be enormous. Alex agreed, knowing that this could be his biggest case yet. Preparations for the robbery began immediately. Alex and his team carefully studied every aspect of the bank's security, developing a plan that would work without failure. Marcus hacked the security system, Linda studied the building's layout, and Alex developed an attack and escape strategy. The day of the robbery has arrived. Alex and his team entered the bank through underground communications, disabling all security systems. Inside the bank, they acted quickly and smoothly, collecting all valuable documents and money. But as often happens, not everything went according to plan. One of the bank employees happened to be on the scene and accidentally stayed late. He managed to call security, and soon the building was surrounded. Alex realized that the situation was getting out of control, but it was too late to retreat. In the midst of the firefight, Alex decided to split up. He distracted the guards, giving his team a chance to escape. It was a risky move, but he knew it was the only way to save them. Alex fought to the last but ended up trapped. The police detained him, and it became a sensation. All of New York was talking about capturing the most dangerous criminal. Alex knew that his game was over, but his spirit was not broken. He knew that his friends were free and that perhaps someday he would be free again. However, while Alex was in prison, his name continued to live. His team continued to commit crimes using his methods and strategies. They remained faithful to their leader and did everything so that he would not be forgotten. Meanwhile, Alex was preparing for a new stage in his life. He understood that prison was only a temporary obstacle, and escape plans were already brewing in his head. His story is not over, and new challenges and adventures await him. 5 long years have passed since Alex was behind bars. His time in prison was not in vain. He studied every little detail, made plans, and established connections with other prisoners. Over the years, he came to respect the prison authorities and guards, using his skills and charisma to earn their trust. Alex knew that escaping was a difficult and dangerous task that required careful preparation and strategic thinking. He began developing an escape plan immediately after his arrest. His main idea was to use fake documents and help from his old allies who were still at large. The first step was to build trust among the guards. Alex began working in the prison library, where he had access to various documents and a computer. He used this access to create fake ID cards and other necessary papers. The second step was to establish contact with the outside world. Alex made contact with Marcus, his trusty hacker. Marcus was able to infiltrate the prison system and falsify records to make it appear that Alex was to be transferred to another prison. The day of the escape was carefully planned. Alex knew that transporting prisoners was one of the most vulnerable moments. Marcus and Linda, who remained at large all these years, organized a front transport company that was supposed to pick up the prisoner for transfer. In the morning, when it was time for transportation, Alex was ready. Fake documents and the help of his team did the trick. The security checked all the papers and, without suspecting any foul play, handed Alex over to the employees of the front company. Inside the van, Marcus and Linda were waiting for Alex. They quickly changed vehicles, transferring him into a car prepared in advance. The path to freedom was full of dangers, but the team acted coherently and confidently. They used old connections and knowledge of the city to avoid police checkpoints and surveillance cameras. After several hours of intense driving, they found themselves in a pre-prepared shelter. Alex was free again, but he understood that now his life would be even more dangerous. He had to hide and find new ways for his activities. The first thing Alex did was change his appearance. He knew that he was wanted all over the world and every little thing could give him away. He turned to an old friend who was a master of disguise, and he helped him change his appearance beyond recognition. With a new appearance and new documents, Alex began to rebuild his life. He realized that New York was now too dangerous for him and decided to move to another place. He chose Los Angeles, the city of opportunity and new beginnings. In Los Angeles, Alex started from scratch, using his skills and experience to build a new criminal empire. He again made connections, recruited people, and developed plans for new, daring robberies. His name became known again, but now he acted even more carefully and cunningly. Alex knew his story was not over. He continued to live on the edge, enjoying every moment of his dangerous and exciting life. New challenges and adventures lay ahead of him, and he was ready to meet them with the same passion and determination that had always been his faithful companions. In Los Angeles, Alex, under his new name Eric, started out cautiously. He understood that he needed to build his criminal empire slowly and quietly. In the first months, he focused on studying the local criminal landscape and establishing contacts with local gangs and the mafia. Eric quickly realized that there were several key players in Los Angeles with whom he needed to establish relationships. One such player was Carlos Morales, a powerful drug lord who controlled much of South Los Angeles. Eric decided that an alliance with Carlos would provide him with protection and access to resources. To establish trust, Eric started small. He organized several successful robberies of banks and jewelry stores, demonstrating his abilities and deducting a portion of the profits to Carlos. Carlos soon realized that Eric was a valuable ally and invited him to work together on larger operations. The first major joint operation was the smuggling of a large shipment of drugs through the port of Los Angeles. Eric used his connections and skills to ensure the cargo passed through customs safely. The operation was successful, and this strengthened their union. Eric continued to build his empire, gaining the respect and fear of local criminals. He used money from smuggling and robberies to invest in legitimate businesses, nightclubs, casinos, and restaurants. These establishments not only brought profit, but also served as a front for money laundering. But Eric knew that success attracts attention, and he was not mistaken. The Los Angeles police began an investigation into his activities. For this purpose, a special FBI agent, Jennifer Hall, was appointed, who was known for her persistence and ability to unwind complex cases. Jennifer quickly realized that Eric was no ordinary criminal. She studied his past, trying to find connections to his crimes in New York and European countries. Eric knew that she would sooner or later find his trail and began to prepare for a possible confrontation. During this time, Eric continued to plan his operations. He decided to carry out one of the most daring robberies of his career, the robbery of the Los Angeles Treasury, where millions of dollars in cash were kept. The plan was complex and required perfect execution. Eric and his team began preparing for the operation. They studied the Treasury building, the daily routine of employees, and the security system. Marcus, his loyal hacker, hacked the security system and created time windows for entry. Linda took over, opening safes again. The day of the robbery has arrived. Eric and his team entered the Treasury at night using underground communications. Having hacked the security system, they began to open safes and collect money. Everything went according to plan, but at the last moment, the security system restarted and the alarm was sent to the police. Eric knew they only had a few minutes before the police arrived. He gave the command for an emergency exit, and the team began to retreat through pre-prepared tunnels. But this time, luck was not on their side. The police acted quickly and surrounded the building. An intense firefight began. Eric and his team fought their way to freedom. They knew that any mistake could cost them their lives. In the midst of the battle, Eric spotted an opportunity to escape through the roof of a building. He gave the command and they began to climb up. A helicopter was waiting for them on the roof, which Eric had prepared in advance for their escape. The helicopter took off, carrying them away from danger. Eric was once again one step ahead of his pursuers, but knew that this was a temporary victory. The police stepped up their efforts and Jennifer Hall continued the hunt. Eric knew that new challenges lay ahead of him, and he was ready for them. He was not going to stop and continued to develop new plans, each time surprising everyone with his ingenuity and composure. His story in Los Angeles continued, and new adventures and challenges awaited him. Eric was ready for anything, knowing that his life was a constant game on the edge of risk and danger. Eric knew that after the last robbery, his position had become even more precarious. The police and FBI stepped up their efforts to catch him, and Jennifer Hall showed no signs of backing down. She was sure that sooner or later she would find a way to catch him. Eric decided that he needed to act even more carefully and strategically. He began to build a network of false leads that were supposed to confuse his pursuers and divert their attention from his real operations. He used his contacts and resources to create several front companies and groups that would become targets for law enforcement. Meanwhile, Eric continued to develop his empire. He organized several large smuggling operations that brought him huge profits. He used this money to further invest in legitimate businesses and strengthen his criminal network. However, despite all the precautions, Jennifer Hall was able to find the weak link in his plans. She learned of his connection with Carlos Morales and began an investigation that led her to one of his secret warehouses. Realizing that he needed to act quickly, Eric decided to carry out a daring operation to eliminate this threat. He gathered his team and developed a plan to destroy all evidence that could link him to Carlos and other crimes. The operation was to take place at night, when security at the warehouse was minimal. Eric knew it was risky, but there was no other choice. At night, they entered the warehouse, neutralized the guards, and began destroying documents and evidence. But Jennifer Hall, having predicted his actions, had already prepared an ambush. As soon as Eric and his team began their work, the warehouse was surrounded by police and riot police. Eric knew they were in a trap. He quickly made the decision to split up and try to break through different exits. In the midst of a firefight, He and several of his men managed to make their way to an emergency exit and escape into the night. Once free, Eric realized that his situation had become critical. He knew Jennifer wouldn't stop until she caught him. Realizing that he needed to radically change his strategy, he decided to leave Los Angeles and start a new life elsewhere. Eric chose San Francisco as his new home. He realized that this city provided many opportunities to continue his activities. He again changed his appearance and documents, starting to build a new criminal empire from scratch. In San Francisco, Eric began by establishing connections with local criminal gangs. He knew that to be successful, he needed to gain the support and trust of local players. Using his skills and experience, he quickly gained respect and recognition. Meanwhile, Jennifer Hall continued her hunt. She realized that Eric had slipped away from Los Angeles and began looking for traces of him throughout the country. She knew that he would not be able to remain in the shadows for long, and that sooner or later he would make himself known. Eric, realizing that the persecution would not end, decided to act proactively. He developed a plan to destroy all records and data that could help Jennifer find him. He used his hackers to hack into databases and delete all information about his past operations. Despite all efforts, the game of cat and mouse continued. Eric understood that his life would always be full of dangers and risks, but this only fueled his excitement. He continued to develop new plans and operations, each time surprising everyone with his ingenuity and composure. Eric quickly adapted to life in San Francisco. He carefully studied the city, its infrastructure, and local criminal gangs. His goal was to find weaknesses in the system and use them for his new operations. Eric understood that his past would haunt him, so he acted with extreme caution. The first step was to establish connections with local criminal elements. Eric started small, organizing several small robberies and smuggling operations. He demonstrated his skills and quickly gained respect among the crime lords. Soon his name again became known in the criminal world, but now under a new pseudonym, Mark. Eric, decided that one of the most promising areas for his activity would be industrial espionage and cybercrime. He knew that many companies in Silicon Valley had poor security for their data and technology. Using his connections, he hired the best hackers and information security specialists. One of Mark's first big operations was breaking into one of the leading technology companies. The goal was to steal secret developments and sell them to competitors. Mark knew it was a risky business, but the potential rewards were huge. A team of hackers led by Mark began work. They hacked the company's security system, gaining access to internal networks and servers. The work went smoothly, and they soon had all the data they needed. But, as often happens, luck turned its back on them. One of the company's employees noticed suspicious activity on the network and called the security service. Soon the building was surrounded, and an operation to apprehend the hackers began. Mark knew he had to act quickly. He gave the command to destroy all traces and began to prepare to escape. Using pre-prepared escape routes, Mark and his team managed to escape from the building. However, the police were already on their trail. A tense race began through the streets of San Francisco. Mark and his men used all their skills to avoid persecution. In the end, they managed to hide in one of the abandoned areas of the city. Mark knew that his position was now even more dangerous. He understood that he needed to change tactics and act even more carefully. Meanwhile, Jennifer Hall did not give up trying to find and catch him. She learned about his new operations and realized that Mark was none other than Eric, her longtime enemy. Jennifer began planning a new operation to apprehend him, knowing that this time he would not be able to escape. Mark knew Jennifer wouldn't stop until she caught him. He began to develop a new plan which was supposed to get him out of the attack and enable him to continue his activities. He decided to use his connections in the international criminal world to create a false identity and move abroad. To do this, Mark contacted one of the most influential criminal groups in Europe. He offered them his services in exchange for protection and help in creating a new life. Soon he received all the necessary documents and was preparing to leave. However, before leaving, Mark decided to conduct one more major case in San Francisco. This was to be his parting gift to the city and proof that he was still the world's most resourceful and elusive criminal. Mark planned a robbery of one of the largest banks in the city. He knew that this case would be difficult and dangerous, but risk was part of his essence. He gathered his team and began preparing for the operation, knowing that every detail must be thought out to the smallest detail. The day of the robbery has arrived. Mark and his team infiltrated the bank using underground tunnels and hacking the security system. They quickly collected all their valuables and began to retreat. But the police were already on the spot and a tense battle began. Mark knew this was his last chance. He used all his skills and experience to escape persecution. In the end, he managed to escape with his team, leaving behind only legends and rumors. He left San Francisco, leaving his past life behind. Now, a new chapter awaited him, full of new challenges and adventures. Eric, was ready for any challenge, knowing that his story was far from over. Eric, true to his name, left San Francisco after a daring bank robbery and headed to Europe. He knew that he now had to start a new life, but his criminal experience and skills were still his main weapon. Eric arrived in Amsterdam, a city with a rich criminal history and many opportunities for those who know how to hide and plan. He started by making connections with local crime bosses. His reputation quickly spread and many wanted to work with him. The first major case in Amsterdam was the robbery of one of the largest jewelry stores. Eric prepared thoroughly. He studied the security schedule, alarm schemes, and possible escape routes. He assembled a team of local professionals who knew the city and could help him implement the plan. The robbery was successful. Eric and his team entered the store at night, disabling the alarm and surveillance cameras. They quickly collected all the valuable jewelry and disappeared through a pre-prepared route. The police arrived too late, and Eric was once again one step ahead of his pursuers. With each new case, Eric strengthened his position in the criminal world of Amsterdam. He began investing money in legitimate businesses to launder profits and create a cover for his activities. Its nightclubs and restaurants became popular gathering places for law-abiding citizens and criminals alike. But Eric knew that his past still haunted him. Jennifer Hall, without giving up trying to find him, learned about his move to Europe. She began working with Europol to increase her ability to catch Eric. She understood that he would continue his crimes and would not stop. Eric, aware of the threat, decided it was time to be proactive. He developed a plan to eliminate Jennifer. To do this, he hired the best specialists in surveillance and sabotage. They began tracking her movements and studying her habits. One night, as Jennifer was returning to her apartment after a long day, she was attacked. But she was ready. Jennifer managed to call for reinforcements and a shootout began. Eric watched from afar, realizing that his plan had failed. Now he knew that Jennifer would be even more persistent. He needed to change strategy again. Eric decided to go underground and stop his major operations for a while. He focused on small matters that wouldn't attract as much attention. Despite all the difficulties, Eric continued to remain elusive. He used his connections and skills to stay ahead of the curve. His life had become a constant game of survival, but he was not going to give up. Eric knew his story was not over yet. He continued to plan new operations, each time surprising everyone with his ingenuity and composure. His reputation grew, and every new criminal dreamed of working with him, or at least learning from him. New challenges and adventures awaited him ahead. Eric was ready for anything, knowing that his life was a constant game on the edge of risk and danger. Eric decided he needed time to lay low and figure out his next steps. He understood that his persecution would become even more intense after the attempt to eliminate Jennifer Hall. Therefore, he decided to leave Amsterdam and find temporary shelter in one of the most inconspicuous corners of Europe. Eric chose Prague. This city, with its complex streets and many hidden places, provided the perfect opportunity to get lost for a while. Eric rented an old apartment in the historical center and began to live a quiet, unremarkable life, so as not to attract attention. However, even being in the shadows, Eric did not stop thinking about the future. He knew he needed to come up with a new, more complex plan to continue his activities and remain free. He began studying new technologies related to cybersecurity and financial fraud. His interest was attracted by the direction of cryptocurrencies and the possibility of using them for hidden operations. Eric began to establish contacts with hackers and cryptocurrency specialists. He created complex schemes that allowed him to move money through multiple layers of security, making it nearly untraceable. His goal was to create anonymous financial flows that would allow him to continue his activities without attracting the attention of the authorities. Gradually, Eric began to penetrate the financial world of cryptocurrencies. He created several shell companies that were engaged in mining and trading cryptocurrencies. These companies not only brought profit, but also served as a front for his main operations. Meanwhile, Jennifer Hall did not give up trying to find him. She knew that Eric would not be able to remain in the shadows for long and would sooner or later make himself known. She continued to cooperate with Europol and local authorities, monitoring for any signs of his activity. One day, Eric learned about a major conference on blockchain technologies that was to be held in Berlin. He decided this was a great opportunity to learn about new trends and network with industry leaders. Having prepared fake documents, Eric went to the conference. In Berlin, Eric met many people interested in cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies. He established contacts with influential people who could help him in his affairs. At the conference, he also learned about new security and encryption techniques that he planned to use in his operations. However, not everything went smoothly. Jennifer Hall, while tracking financial flows, came across one of his shell companies. She quickly realized that this could be a trail leading to Eric. Using her connections and resources, she found out that Eric might be at a conference in Berlin. Eric sensed danger when he saw several suspicious people at the conference. He realized that Jennifer was close to his capture. Using his skills and intuition, he began preparations for a quick escape. But this time the situation was more complicated than he expected. One evening, as Eric was returning to his hotel, he was surrounded by a group of people. He quickly realized that these were agents, Europol, working undercover. A tense chase began through the streets of Berlin. Eric used all his skills to evade pursuit, making his way through narrow alleys and tangled courtyards. In the end, he managed to escape, but he realized that his situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. He decided that it was time to radically change his strategy and find a new, even more reliable shelter. Eric began planning a move to Asia, where his traces could be lost among billions of people. His path was full of risks and dangers, but Eric knew that his story was not over yet. New challenges and adventures lay ahead of him, and he was ready to meet them with the same passion and determination that had always been his faithful companions. Eric knew that Asia would provide him with new opportunities and challenges. He chose Hong Kong as his next destination. The city, with its high level of technology, financial resources, and numerous hidden corners, was ideal for his needs. Using his fake documents, he arrived in Hong Kong and began to settle down. At first, Eric focused on exploring the city and making new connections. He knew he had to tread carefully so as not to attract attention. He opened a small consulting company that dealt with security and cryptocurrency issues. This company served as a cover for his real affairs. Eric began attending various business events and conferences to network with local business leaders and influencers. He quickly realized that Hong Kong was a place where you could make a fortune quickly if you knew how to use your resources and connections correctly. One day, at one of the events, he met Liana Chen, an influential woman who controlled a significant part of the shadow business in Hong Kong. Liana was known for her cruelty and skill in dealing. Eric realized that an alliance with her could give him a significant advantage. He began to build trust with Liana, demonstrating his skills and suggestions for increasing her profits. Liana was impressed by his abilities and offered him cooperation. Eric became her confidant, organizing large-scale smuggling and financial fraud operations. At this time, Jennifer Hall did not give up trying to find Eric. She knew that he would not stop and would continue his crimes. Europol began to expand its operations in Asia, trying to find traces of his activities. Jennifer received information that Eric might be in Hong Kong and began preparing an operation to capture him. Eric, realizing the threat, decided to carry out one of the most daring operations of his career. He planned a robbery of one of the largest banks in Hong Kong, where huge reserves of gold and cash were kept. He understood that this business would be difficult and dangerous, but risk was part of his essence. He assembled his team, which included local hacking and security experts. Preparations for the robbery took several months. Eric studied every detail, developed an escape plan and ways to bypass the guards. He knew that success depended on their well-coordinated work and accuracy in executing the plan. The day of the robbery arrived. Eric and his team entered the bank through underground communications, disabling all security systems. Inside the bank, they acted quickly and smoothly, collecting all valuables and preparing to retreat. But, as often happens, not everything went according to plan. One of the bank employees who stayed late noticed suspicious activity and called the police. Soon the building was surrounded and an intense firefight began. Eric knew he had to act quickly. He gave the command for an emergency exit, and the team began to retreat through previously prepared tunnels. But the police were on top. Jennifer Hall, having predicted Eric's actions, directed her forces to block all exits. Eric and his team are trapped. An intense battle ensued, and many of his men were detained or wounded. Eric, realizing that the situation was critical, decided to split up. He used his skills and experience to force his way through one of the less guarded exits. After several hours of intense racing through the streets of Hong Kong, he managed to escape. He found refuge in one of the secluded corners of the city and began to think about his next steps. Eric realized that now his position had become even more dangerous. He needed to find a new way to hide and continue his activities. His history in Hong Kong was full of risks and dangers, but he was not going to give up. Eric knew that new challenges and adventures lay ahead, and he was ready for them. He began to develop new plans to stay one step ahead of his pursuers and continue to live on the edge of risk and danger. After Eric managed to evade capture in Hong Kong, he realized that he now had to act even more carefully. He needed to temporarily disappear to avoid the scrutiny of the police and Europol. He decided to go to a quieter place where he could think about his next steps and recuperate. Eric chose Bangkok as his next hideout. The city was large enough to get lost and provided plenty of opportunities for those skilled in hiding. He found a small apartment on the outskirts of the city and began to build a new life, avoiding unnecessary attention. Eric started by making local contacts. He knew he needed to rebuild his resources and connections to continue his activities. He found local crime bosses who could help him with this. He offered his services in exchange for protection and access to resources. One of the first cases in Bangkok was the robbery of a large electronics warehouse. Eric understood that this business would allow him to obtain the necessary money and equipment for his operations. He assembled a team of local specialists and began preparations. The robbery was successful. Eric and his team entered the warehouse at night, disabling the alarm and surveillance cameras. They quickly collected all their valuables and disappeared through a pre-prepared route. The police arrived too late, and Eric was once again one step ahead of his pursuers. Meanwhile, Jennifer Hall continued to hunt for him. She received information about his movement to Asia and began to cooperate with local law enforcement agencies. She understood that Eric would not stop and was preparing to capture him. Eric, realizing that his position was still unstable, decided to carry out one of the most daring operations of his career. He planned a robbery of one of the largest casinos in Macau, where huge amounts of cash and jewelry were kept. He understood that this business would be difficult and dangerous, but risk was part of his essence. He gathered his team and began preparing for the operation. The preparation took several months. Eric studied every detail, developed an escape plan and ways to bypass the guards. He knew that success depended on their well-coordinated work and accuracy in executing the plan. The day of the robbery arrived. Eric and his team entered the casino through underground communications, disabling all security systems. Inside, they acted quickly and smoothly, collecting all valuables and preparing to retreat. But as often happens, not everything went according to plan. One of the casino employees noticed suspicious activity and called security. Soon the building was surrounded, and an intense firefight began. Eric knew he had to act quickly. He gave the command for an emergency exit, and the team began to retreat through previously prepared tunnels. The police and casino security worked quickly, but Eric and his team managed to escape. They used all their skills to evade pursuit and hide in one of the secluded corners of Macau. Eric understood that the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. He decided that it was time to radically change his strategy and find a new, even more reliable shelter. He began planning a move to South America, where his traces could be lost among many cities and villages. His path was full of risks and dangers, but Eric knew that his story was not over yet. New challenges and adventures lay ahead of him, and he was ready to meet them with the same passion and determination that had always been his faithful companions. Eric knew that South America would provide him with new opportunities, and an opportunity to escape the persecution of Jennifer Hall and Europol. He decided to go to Brazil, a country where you can easily get lost among many cities and diverse cultures. Eric arrived in Rio de Janeiro under a new name and with carefully forged documents. The city offered many hidden corners and criminal opportunities. At first, he lived quietly, exploring the city and establishing new connections with local crime bosses. His first big case in Rio was the robbery of one of the largest jewelry stores in the city center. Eric prepared thoroughly. He studied the security schedule, alarm schemes, and possible escape routes. He assembled a team of local professionals who knew the city and could help him implement the plan. The robbery went smoothly. Eric and his team entered the store at night, disabling the alarm and surveillance cameras. They quickly collected all the valuable jewelry and disappeared through a pre-prepared route. The police arrived too late, and Eric was once again one step ahead of his pursuers. Meanwhile, Jennifer Hall did not give up trying to find him. She learned of his move to South America and began cooperating with local law enforcement. She knew Eric would continue his crimes and prepared to capture him. Eric, realizing the threat, decided to temporarily lie low. He went to the Amazon where he found a secluded place far from civilization. There he pondered his next steps and regained his strength. He knew that sooner or later he would have to return to his activities, but now he needed time to think. In the Amazon, Eric met several locals who helped him settle in and provided him with the necessary information about the region. He used this time to study new technologies and techniques that could help him in future operations. A few months later, feeling ready for new challenges, Eric decided to return to the big city. He chose São Paulo, Brazil's largest metropolis, to begin the next chapter of his criminal activities. Eric again established contacts with local criminal groups, gradually regaining his former strength and influence. In São Paulo, Eric conceived a new big business. He decided to rob the city's central bank, where billions of dollars in cash were kept. This heist was to be his most daring and challenging yet, and he knew that success depended on careful preparation and teamwork. Eric assembled a team of the best specialists, hackers, crackers, and security experts. Preparations for the robbery took several months. They studied every detail, developed an escape plan and ways to bypass the guards. Eric knew that success depended on their teamwork and accurate execution of the plan. The day of the robbery has arrived. Eric and his team entered the bank through underground communications, disabling all security systems. Inside the bank, they acted quickly and smoothly, collecting all valuables and preparing to retreat. But, as often happens, not everything went according to plan. One of the bank employees noticed suspicious activity and called the police. Soon the building was surrounded and an intense firefight began. Eric knew he had to act quickly. He gave the command for an emergency exit, and the team began to retreat through previously prepared tunnels. The police were on top, but Eric and his team managed to escape. They used all their skills to evade pursuit and hide in one of the secluded corners of Sao Paulo. Eric knew that the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous, and he needed to find a new shelter. Eric knew his latest robberies had attracted too much attention. He decided that he needed to temporarily stop his criminal operations and focus on creating a new plan that would allow him to operate more covertly and safely. At this time, he thought about using his skills for something more complex and sophisticated, but at the same time profitable. One day, while researching local news and financial reports, Eric came across information about a major international cybersecurity conference that was to be held in Sao Paulo. He realized that this was a great opportunity to learn about the latest technology and defense techniques that could help him in his future operations. Eric decided to attend this conference under the guise of a businessman interested in cybersecurity for his company. He prepared forged documents and thought out his cover story so as not to arouse suspicion. At the conference, he met many specialists and experts in the field of cybersecurity with whom he managed to establish contacts. His attention was particularly drawn to one of the presentations dedicated to the latest banking data protection system developed by a leading technology company. Eric realized that if he could gain access to this system, his future operations would become much less risky. He decided he needed to find out more about the developers and their projects. Eric began collecting information about the development company and its employees. He learned that one of the leading engineers, Marcus Silva, lives in Sao Paulo and often visits local cafes and clubs. Eric decided that he needed to approach the matter delicately and carefully so as not to arouse suspicion. He began visiting the same places as Marcus, gradually forming friendships with him. Eric introduced himself as an IT specialist working for a large international company. He skillfully maintained conversations on technical topics, inspiring Marcus's confidence. Over time, their relationship became more trusting, and Marcus began sharing his thoughts and ideas about cybersecurity. Eric skillfully steered conversations in the right direction, gradually learning more about the defense system that Marcus had developed. He understood that he needed to act carefully and not rush. One day, Marcus invited Eric to a private presentation of a new version of the security system, which was to be held at the company's office. Eric knew this was his chance. He prepared, thinking through all the details and possible escape routes. During the presentation, Eric listened and observed carefully. He noticed that employees have flash drives accessible only to them, which are used to update the system. This was the key to his plan. He needed to get his hands on one of these drives. After the presentation, Eric, taking advantage of the moment when Marcus was distracted, managed to quietly take one of the flash drives. He knew he had to act quickly. Returning home, he began to study the contents of the drive, discovering all the necessary data to hack the security system. Eric now had access to information that could make his operations less risky and more profitable. He decided to use the obtained data to hack one of the largest banks in Sao Paulo. This bank not only stored huge amounts of money, but also valuable data about its clients that could be sold on the black market. Eric carefully prepared for the operation, using all his skills and knowledge. He hacked the bank's security system, disabling the alarm and surveillance cameras. Together with his team, he entered the bank and began collecting valuable data and money. Eric knew that after the successful bank robbery in Sao Paulo, his position had become even more precarious. He decided that he needed to use the funds and data obtained to strengthen his position and create more complex and large-scale operations. He also understood that it was necessary to act secretly so as not to attract unnecessary attention. Eric began to analyze the data he received from the bank. These included financial statements, major transaction information, and customer data. He knew that this information could be used for further criminal activities, as well as for blackmail and manipulation. He decided to create a network of shell companies that would engage in legal activities, but at the same time serve as a cover for his criminal operations. He invested part of the stolen funds in real estate, technology startups, and other promising areas. These companies not only brought profit, but also created the appearance of legal activity. Eric also began working with local criminal groups, providing them with information and resources in exchange for protection and support. He skillfully used his skills and knowledge to gain respect and trust among local authorities. Meanwhile, Jennifer Hall continued to hunt for him. She knew that Eric would not stop and would continue his crimes. She increased cooperation with local law enforcement agencies, trying to find any traces of his activities. One day, Eric learned about a major international jewelry exhibition that was to be held in Sao Paulo. This exhibition attracted the attention of collectors and dealers from all over the world, and among the exhibits were unique jewelry worth millions of dollars. Eric realized that this was a great opportunity for a new daring robbery. He began to develop a plan to rob the exhibition. Eric studied the security schedule, exhibit layouts, and possible escape routes. He assembled a team of the best specialists, including hackers, crackers, and security experts. The preparation took several weeks. Eric and his team carefully worked through every step of the plan to minimize risks and avoid mistakes. They knew that the success of the operation depended on their well-coordinated work and the accuracy of the plan. The day of the robbery arrived. Eric and his team entered the exhibition at night, using underground communications and hacking the security system. They quickly turned off the alarm and surveillance cameras so as not to attract the attention of security. Inside the exhibition center, they acted quickly and smoothly, collecting all the valuable jewelry and preparing to retreat. But as often happens, not everything went according to plan. One of the security guards who noticed suspicious activity called the police. Soon the building was surrounded and an intense firefight began. Eric understood that he needed to act quickly and decisively. He gave the command for an emergency exit, and the team began to retreat through previously prepared tunnels. They used smoke bombs and other means to create disruption and divert police attention. Eric and his team managed to escape, but lost some of the loot in their haste. Eric returned to his hideout, realizing that the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. He knew that Jennifer Hall would not give up trying to catch him, and he needed to act even more carefully. It decided to temporarily shut down its large operations and focus on strengthening its network and improving security. Eric began developing new security and encryption methods to remain elusive. He understood that his life would always be full of risk and danger, but this only fueled his excitement. New challenges and adventures lay ahead of him, and he was ready to meet them with the same determination and composure that had always been his faithful companions. Eric knew that his methods were gradually becoming too predictable for Jennifer Hall and her team. He needed to find something new that would give him an edge and make his actions less predictable. He began to think about how he could use new technologies and innovations to his advantage. One day, while reading news about the latest developments in the field of biotechnology and medicine, Eric came across information about a recently opened laboratory in Sao Paulo, which was engaged in genetic research and the development of unique biological drugs. He realized that if he could gain access to these technologies, he could create something completely new and unexpected. Eric began to study the activities of the laboratory and their developments. He learned that they were developing drugs that could change human biological data, including DNA and fingerprints. This could be an ideal way to create new identities and hide your tracks. He decided that he needed to infiltrate the laboratory and gain access to their research. Eric has assembled a team of the best hacking and cybersecurity experts. They began preparations for the operation, studying every detail of the laboratory's security system. Eric knew it would be a difficult and dangerous operation, but risk was part of who he was. The day of the operation arrived. Eric and his team entered the laboratory at night using a hacked security system. They quickly turned off the alarm and surveillance cameras so as not to attract the attention of security. Inside the laboratory, they began searching for the necessary data and samples. Eric knew he had to act quickly to avoid detection. They found the necessary materials and began to copy the data, but at that moment the backup alarm system went off. Security responded quickly and the building was surrounded. Eric understood that he needed to act decisively. He used special devices to create interference and distract the guards. This gave them enough time to collect all the necessary data and samples and begin their retreat. They escaped from the building through underground communications and disappeared into the night. Eric knew he now had unique data and technology that could give him a significant advantage. He began to develop plans to use these technologies to create new identities and cover his tracks. He created several fake identities with altered biological data that would be untraceable. This allowed him to continue his activities while remaining elusive to the police and Europol. Meanwhile, Jennifer Hall, having learned about the laboratory hack, realized that Eric was reaching a new level. She stepped up her efforts to capture him, bringing in the best experts in cybersecurity and genetics. She knew that now the struggle would become even more difficult and intense. Eric, sensing the approach of danger, decided to use new technologies to carry out one of the most daring operations of his career. He planned a robbery of a major international bank using altered biological data and fake identities. Preparation for the operation took several months. Eric and his team carefully studied every detail of the plan to minimize risks and avoid mistakes. They used the latest technology and techniques to remain undetected. The day of the robbery arrived. Eric and his team infiltrated the bank under the guise of employees, using altered biological data. They quickly hacked the security system and began collecting money and valuable data. Everything was going according to plan, but suddenly the backup alarm system went off. The police arrived on the scene within minutes, and the building was surrounded. Eric understood that he needed to act quickly and decisively. He used new technology to interfere and distract the police, allowing them to escape with the loot. After successfully robbing an international bank, Eric decided it was time to go into the shadows and stop his active work for a while. He realized that his successes were attracting too much attention, and he needed to think about his next steps and plan new operations. Eric moved to a small village on the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro, where he found a secluded place to rest and reflect. He knew he needed to make good use of this time. He continued to study the latest technologies, especially in the fields of cybersecurity and genetics, in order to be prepared for new challenges. One day, while browsing the news, Eric came across information about a new company developing artificial intelligence and advanced security systems. The company stated that its developments are capable of providing an unsurpassed level of protection for any data and objects. Eric realized that if he could access this technology, it would give him a huge advantage. He began to study the company and its employees. He learned that the company was conducting private demonstrations of its technology for potential investors and partners. Eric decided that he needed to sneak into one of these demonstrations to learn more about the developments and the possibilities of their use. He prepared false documents and a cover story to infiltrate the demonstration under the guise of being a representative of a large financial corporation. At the event, he met many specialists and experts in the field of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. He was especially interested in the presentation on the latest data protection system based on artificial intelligence. Eric made contact with the company's lead engineer, Mario Ferreira. Under the guise of an interested investor, he began a conversation about the possibilities of using their technology in the financial sector. Mario, impressed by Eric's knowledge and interest, invited him to the laboratory to become more familiar with the developments. In the lab, Eric saw advanced security systems and artificial intelligence that could greatly improve his operations. He realized that he needed to gain access to these technologies in order to use them for his own purposes. Eric began working on a plan to hack the laboratory and steal the necessary data. The preparation took several weeks. Eric and his team studied the laboratory's security system and developed a plan to infiltrate and collect data. The day of the operation arrived. Eric and his team entered the laboratory at night using a hacked security system. They quickly turned off the alarm and surveillance cameras so as not to attract the attention of security. Inside the laboratory, they began searching for the necessary data and equipment. Eric knew he had to act quickly to avoid detection. They found servers with data about artificial intelligence and security systems and began copying the information. But at that moment, the backup alarm system went off. Security responded quickly, and the building was surrounded. Eric understood that he needed to act decisively. He used special devices to create interference and distract the guards. This gave them enough time to collect all the necessary data and begin their retreat. They escaped from the building through underground communications and disappeared into the night. Eric knew that he now had unique technology that could give him a significant advantage. He began developing plans to use these technologies to create new operations and improve the security of his existing schemes. Meanwhile, Jennifer Hall did not give up trying to find Eric. She learned about the laboratory hack and realized that it was reaching a new level. She has intensified her efforts to catch him, bringing in top experts in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Eric, sensing the approach of danger, decided to use new technologies to carry out one of the most daring operations of his career. He planned a robbery of a large international data center where confidential data of the world's largest corporations was stored. Preparation for the operation took several months. Eric and his team carefully studied every detail of the plan to minimize risks and avoid mistakes. They used the latest technology and techniques to remain undetected. The day of the robbery arrived. Eric and his team infiltrated the data center under the guise of employees, using altered biological data and fake identities. They quickly hacked the security system and began collecting data. Everything was going according to plan, but suddenly the backup alarm system went off. The police arrived on the scene within minutes, and the building was surrounded. Eric understood that he needed to act quickly and decisively. He used new technology to interfere and distract the police, allowing them to escape with the loot. The operation was successful, and Eric was again one step ahead of his pursuers. He knew that he now had everything he needed to continue his activities and remain elusive. New challenges and adventures lay ahead of him, and he was ready to meet them with the same passion and determination that had always been his faithful companions. Eric continued his operations using the acquired data and technology, which gave him a huge advantage. He knew that his every action attracted more attention, and he realized that his time might be limited. but his passion and determination remained unchanged. Several months later, after the successful robbery of the data center, Eric began planning a new, even more complex operation. He planned to rob one of the largest banks in the world, located in Zurich. This bank stored not only huge sums of money, but also valuable documents and jewelry. Eric carefully prepared for this operation. He studied the bank's security system, building layouts and employees' daily routines. He knew that this case would be the most difficult of his career, and he understood that success depended on the accuracy and well-coordinated work of his team. The day of the robbery arrived. Eric and his team entered the bank under the guise of employees of a security company. They used the latest technology to hack security systems and disable surveillance cameras. Inside the bank, they acted quickly and professionally, collecting all valuables and preparing to retreat. But this time, luck turned its back on them. One of the bank employees noticed suspicious activity and called the police. Soon the building was surrounded by special forces, and an intense firefight began. Eric realized that their plan was in jeopardy and they needed to act quickly. He gave the command for an emergency exit, and the team began to retreat through previously prepared tunnels. But the special forces were prepared for such a development of events and blocked all exits. Eric and his men are trapped. In the midst of the firefight, Eric was seriously wounded. He realized that his time was up. His men tried to pull him out of the building, but the special forces were advancing closer. Eric knew he had to give his team a chance to save themselves. Gathering his last strength, he ordered his men to flee, covering their retreat. He knew that this was his last fight. Eric stayed behind to hold off the special forces' advance, giving his team an opportunity to escape. When the special forces finally broke through to him, Eric was already mortally wounded. He knew his game was up, but he left knowing that he remained true to his path and his team until the last. His name became a legend in the criminal world. Eric will forever be remembered as the most inventive and elusive criminal whose daring robberies and sharp mind left a mark on history. His team, taking advantage of his latest sacrifice, managed to escape and continue his work, respecting and honoring the memory of their leader. Jennifer Hall was finally able to take a break from the long chase, but even she admitted that Eric was one of the smartest and most cunning opponents she had ever caught. His story has become a legend, and many will remember him for a long time as a man who lived on the edge and remained true to his path to the end.